Este esfuerzo, el cual viene siendo apoyado por la Organización de los Estados Americanos, nos permitirá tener una gran información para poder mapear estas iniciativas de innovación y poder que ellas contribuyan al crecimiento económico, a la competitividad y al bienestar de nuestras naciones.
Como bien sabemos, nos encontramos ya en la cuarta revolución industrial, la que está cambiando rápidamente la forma en que se hace negocios, se produce, se consume y se genera bienestar y entretenimiento en el mundo. Es la mayor amenaza, tal vez la mejor oportunidad que tenemos en nuestras naciones.
The Inter-American Teacher Education Network, the I-10, is working to improve the quality of teachers with an emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education. In 2019, the I-10 launched the first STEM Teacher Fellowship of the Americas. The Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas, ECPA, is working with governments in the Caribbean to advance electric mobility and clean transport as the sub-region pursues energy independence. Under our Integrated Water Resources Management Program, SETI is responding to the demand of member states for platforms and applications that enable data-driven policies. In the Central American region, for example, we are expanding the scope of Costa Rica's Plataforma Interactiva de Aplicación del Clima Tropical. This tool captures and disseminates real-time climate and water data, promoting resilient agriculture. The Inter-American Committee on Ports is building human and institutional capacity through public-private partnerships to address port modernization, logistics, and security. CooperaNet, SETI's multi-stakeholder platform for cooperation and partnerships, is being relaunched in 2019, responding to member states' call for a more robust hub for cooperation. In a region where 8 out of 10 consumers begin or end their shopping process online, SETI has entered into a partnership with the private sector.
Es una herramienta que sin duda acerca a las MIPYMES hacia la demanda que hoy está migrando a Internet, y con eso pretendemos mejorar las ventas y el posicionamiento de las empresas pequeñas.
As we look to the future, the Executive Secretariat for Integral Development will continue to leverage cooperation and partnerships to expand our reach, proving that together we are much more than the sum of our 34 member states.
Me and my kids have been there for over an year right now. And children are friends. It doesn't matter where they come from.
nosotros estamos en una zona netamente selvática. La línea de adyacencia va desde el norte hasta el sur, va desde Modesto Méndez hasta Aguas Turbias, tanto en el norte como en el sur. Esta línea tiene 215 kilómetros de extensión.
De allí vino él, se buscó creo con los de la OEA y de allí vino el proyecto para acá, para Judá. Y fue que lo dieron el terreno y lo dieron todo que era mano de obra y el material para hacer las casas que están ahorita. Y por ese motivo estamos aquí viviendo todavía.
La misión continúa trabajando en la implementación de medidas de fomento de la confianza mientras aguarda el resultado del reclamo que está atendiendo la Corte Internacional de Justicia por la disputa marítima, territorial e insular. Nuestra oficina en la zona de adyacencia realiza verificaciones a solicitud de ambos gobiernos, facilita reuniones y patrullajes conjuntos entre las Fuerzas Armadas y promueve una cultura de paz y cooperación entre las comunidades locales.
Children will be children and they have harmony. They don't see each other as a different country, but they see each other that they're growing together.
Esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
more than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
SETI's results for 2018 proves our effectiveness as a development partner, placing people at the center of our work and leveraging partnerships and cooperation to transform policy imperatives into action. With an eye on the rapidly changing global context, SETI is innovating to constructively address the emerging challenges and opportunities for the region. As part of our competitiveness program, SETI is designing precise tools to assess assets and capabilities in the productive sector to determine paths towards higher value goods and services. As our flagship program for partnerships, the Americas Competitiveness Exchange on Innovation and Entrepreneurship, the OAS, will continue to leverage good practices and the power of networks to increase trade and investment in the region.
For us, the role of the OAS is very important, connecting countries, connecting governments and private sector, and letting us know what other countries are doing it and how we can replicate that in our countries to enhance development.
For me, who has come here to look at how can we develop our own ecosystem, our own innovation hubs, our own accelerators, I think seeing this, touching, feeling, seeing the transformation, seeing how quickly you've made it happen is a testament to what is possible. So I believe all of us leave here stronger than ever.
The Working Group of Experts on Subnational Competitiveness, the GTEX, is our gateway program to promote local economic competitiveness policies alongside municipal and state-level governments, together with the private sector and academia.
Este tipo de reuniones te sirven para darte cuenta de todo lo que se está viviendo en América Latina sobre los temas de competitividad. Y hoy justamente en este sector estamos viendo sobre todo los temas de innovación tecnológica. Los que si hablamos de competitividad tenemos que hablar de tecnología. Y me está ayudando mucho para ver el panorama de ver lo que están haciendo otras ciudades y lo que podemos llegar a aplicar también nosotros en México.
The Hub on the Transfer and Commercialization of Technology is connecting and strengthening national innovation ecosystems in the region. Each edition of the Hub trains budding technology entrepreneurs from the region's public and private sectors to take promising products and services from idea to market.
¿Por qué es importante que estemos juntos en esto? Porque la región tiene que estar unida y me parece que hay mucho conocimiento en la región que todavía no está explotado comercialmente como podría hacer, y esta es la mejor manera de hacerlo.
Tenemos la proyección de cada año generar y compartir nuevas experiencias entre aquellos que contribuyen a la innovación. Queremos cambiar el cómo lo hemos estado haciendo en Latinoamérica. Queremos generar la unión de los países, queremos colaborar.
Our virtual platform on technology foresight, Prospecta Americas, will support OAS member states in identifying and mapping future trends and technological development of critical importance for the Americas.
Este esfuerzo, el cual viene siendo apoyado por la Organización de los Estados Americanos, nos permitirá tener una gran información para poder mapear estas iniciativas de innovación y poder que ellas contribuyan al crecimiento económico, a la competitividad y al bienestar de nuestras naciones.
Como bien sabemos, nos encontramos ya en la cuarta revolución industrial, la que está cambiando rápidamente la forma en que se hace negocios, se produce, se consume y se genera bienestar y entretenimiento en el mundo. Es la mayor amenaza, tal vez la mejor oportunidad que tenemos en nuestras naciones.
The Inter-American Teacher Education Network, the I-10, is working to improve the quality of teachers with an emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education. In 2019, the I-10 launched the first STEM Teacher Fellowship of the Americas. The Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas, ECPA, is working with governments in the Caribbean to advance electric mobility and clean transport as the sub-region pursues energy independence. Under our Integrated Water Resources Management Program, SETI is responding to the demand of member states for platforms and applications that enable data-driven policies. In the Central American region, for example, we are expanding the scope of Costa Rica's Plataforma Interactiva de Aplicación del Clima Tropical. This tool captures and disseminates real-time climate and water data, promoting resilient agriculture. The Inter-American Committee on Ports is building human and institutional capacity through public-private partnerships to address port modernization, logistics, and security. CooperaNet, SETI's multi-stakeholder platform for cooperation and partnerships, is being relaunched in 2019, responding to member states' call for a more robust hub for cooperation. In a region where 8 out of 10 consumers begin or end their shopping process online, SETI has entered into a partnership with the private sector.
Es una herramienta que sin duda acerca a las MIPYMES hacia la demanda que hoy está migrando a Internet, y con eso pretendemos mejorar las ventas y el posicionamiento de las empresas pequeñas.
As we look to the future, the Executive Secretariat for Integral Development will continue to leverage cooperation and partnerships to expand our reach, proving that together we are much more than the sum of our 34 member states.
Me and my kids have been there for over an year right now. And children are friends. It doesn't matter where they come from.
Estamos en una zona netamente selvática. La línea de adyacencia va desde el norte hasta el sur, va desde Modesto Méndez hasta Aguas Turbias, tanto en el norte como en el sur. Esta línea tiene 215 kilómetros de extensión.
De allí vino él, se buscó creo con los de la OEA y de allí vino el proyecto para acá, para Judá. Y fue que lo dieron el terreno, y lo dieron todo que era mano de obra y el material para hacer las casas que están ahorita. Y por ese motivo estamos aquí viviendo todavía.
La misión continúa trabajando en la implementación de medidas de fomento de la confianza mientras aguarda el resultado del reclamo que está atendiendo la Corte Internacional de Justicia por la disputa marítima, territorial e insular. Nuestra oficina en la zona de adyacencia realiza verificaciones a solicitud de ambos gobiernos, facilita reuniones y patrullajes conjuntos entre las Fuerzas Armadas y promueve una cultura de paz y cooperación entre las comunidades locales.
Children will be children and they have harmony. They don't see each other as a different country, but they see each other that they're growing together.
Hoy, esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
more than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
SETI's results for 2018 proves our effectiveness as a development partner, placing people at the center of our work and leveraging partnerships and cooperation to transform policy imperatives into action. With an eye on the rapidly changing global context, SETI is innovating to constructively address the emerging challenges and opportunities for the region. As part of our competitiveness program, SETI is designing precise tools to assess assets and capabilities in the productive sector to determine paths towards higher value goods and services. As our flagship program for partnerships, the Americas Competitiveness Exchange on Innovation and Entrepreneurship, the OAS, will continue to leverage good practices and the power of networks to increase trade and investment in the region.
For us, the role of the OAS is very important, connecting countries, connecting governments and private sector, and letting us know what other countries are doing it and how we can replicate that in our countries to enhance development.
For me, who has come here to look at how can we develop our own ecosystem, our own innovation hubs, our own accelerators, I think seeing this, touching, feeling, seeing the transformation,
with a view to continuing our dialogue with delegations. That said, the delegation of Ecuador has the floor. With your permission, I'd like to give you a brief presentation on the fight against corruption in COVID-19 times. Over the course of this presentation, I will try to ask one of the questions that I put to you during my first set of comments concerning corruption under emergency situations based on the daily reality in the fight against corruption in COVID times. In March of 2020 in Ecuador, a health emergency was declared. There was a curfew in the entire country to deal with this situation. Since that time, we received citizens reporting on possible cases of corruption in health entities and even other fraud when it came to body bags. So as of recently, we put together a very interdisciplinary task force made up by all parties with transparency and those who fight against corruption. Prosecutors in the provinces, public health persons, and we have the support of a specialized entity from the law enforcement of the National Police. And thus, we have been able to prosecute the cases of fraud in the entire country. This initiative is through the Transparency Unit and the Fight Against Corruption. And we have been able to pinpoint all of the acts of corruption throughout the entire country, which have cropped up during the state of emergency, including investigations in the national jurisdiction. And that is how today we can talk about results. We have 160 cases open in cases which have to do with corruption, particularly in healthcare centers and also with regards to other things. 145 are being investigated. 3 are being evaluated, ready for legal proceedings, and others are still being looked at. We have carried out 7,327 proceedings in 21 provinces, some of these simultaneously in different locales. And we have got about 100 effective coverage in every one of them. In the 160 leading proceedings, we have 246 people who have been indicted and 4 convicted. But in as much as no country was prepared for the pandemic, I'm quite sure that nobody was ready to control public monies in each of the institutions that required that to deal with the situation. And because of that, precisely, people and criminal groups took advantage of this situation. During this time, we found some hubs, beginning with everything that was established in the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, the Medida Convention, in Article 9 with regards to public contracting by public entities. And we've observed that they did not respect the basic transparency, competency, and other objective criteria that are enshrined there. The system of public contracting in Ecuador is permeable. And in the emergency situation, we could see how the discretionary contractions took place were looked at. We were not able to come up with criteria to deal with the suppliers, given that the contractors didn't have any exhaustive analyses to look at these cases, and in many cases, they didn't have the economic wherewithal or the sophistication to comply with the commitments made that served as an instrument to look at these branches of power. Once we put together the cases, we had some problems in quantifying the cases from the state, and we also saw that we had to deal with the products that were needed during the pandemic, and furthermore, the required information by institutions that were part of these contracting processes or that were involved in the investigation in many cases did incomplete work or got bogged down or simply didn't fulfill what was necessary, and therefore proceedings got slowed up. During this time frame, we have also got some best cases or learning. In crisis times, there is greater rate of committing crimes against public administration. And in the case of Ecuador, the rates of fraud took off. Since that time, there was a need to have standards and tools and specialized personnel so that we could respond to the needs of the population. On a national scale, we had an exchange of knowledge and strategic outlooks in various spheres. The corruption networks came after the public institutions, which could not speed up all of the legal proceedings, and therefore it's necessary to deepen the analysis in terms of the influence of social media. In this case, they were channels for reporting and helped the legal proceedings, but they were also a distraction at the same time. So we can share some of the work with you, and we have to improve our ability and our institutional wherewithal related to investigative techniques and crimes against public administration. We have to ensure that rights and new ways of committing crime are looked at so that we can have everything in lockstep with our standards. We have to improve our operational ability to have trustworthy statistics that undergird putting together our fight against corruption. We need to promote interinstitutional alliances among states that can prevent acts of corruption. And then finally, we have to strengthen our alliances and promote them in terms of international criminal proceedings so that we can get information and look at some of the precautionary measures, extradition, and so on and so forth. Now, thus far, dear authorities and colleagues, the intervention of Ecuador in this dialogue has been put, and I hope that our experience and the lessons learned will contribute to an analysis of this phenomenon and is applied to the reality of each country within the context in our region. Thank you very much for your attention. Now, let us move on to the delegation of Guatemala. Guatemala is recognized. Good afternoon, Your Excellency, Madam Chairman Diana Salazar, and greetings to all others who are with us this afternoon. First and foremost, we would like to warmly greet you from Guatemala and say we're very happy to participate. And as such, I would also like to warmly greet Madam Spotkinta, Attorney General of the country, which, because of force majeure, could not participate this afternoon, and we'd also like to thank you for the election that took place so that the Attorney General's office could participate. It'll be an honor for us. Inasmuch as this is the 11th REMJA meeting of Ministers of Justice and other ministers and Attorney General of the region, we find that this is very important for the region, and this is an appropriate place to analyze and exchange information and experience when it comes to justice. This is done with a view to establishing a framework for regional coordination, which will underscore public policies and best practices so that we can promote international legal cooperation. For Guatemala, it is of utmost importance to participate in this recognized international forum, inasmuch as we feel it's crucial to establish a framework for our joint work amongst all member countries of the Organization of American States to work for the same objective, which will lead us to consolidate an agile, efficient system in keeping with international standards. With regards to the driving force of REMJA, we have to underscore the use of new technology and information, as well as communication, as has already been said by those who spoke before me, particularly in legal proceedings. And as of 2020, there's a new variable worldwide, and this specifically refers to COVID-19 pandemic. This changed all practices and the dynamic, not only of in terms of administration of justice, but in every aspect socially. Justice in the country has been undergoing a transition towards technological modernization. Given that the trends and the context deserve this and have called for it, so alongside the pandemic, we've had to step up implementation of technological tools. We've had video conference hearings and the use of electronic means in different arenas. And an example of this is the use in work systems, notification systems, and electronic signatures. For example, digitization of timeframes and teleworking, which have allowed us to pivot and look after the health of people in these institutions. Institutional cooperation amongst all entities in the state, and particularly strengthening the web portals, as well as setting up other apps and software for mobile proceedings, which allow all citizens to report and also follow up their own cases. Now, these practices are very helpful, both for the institutions as well as for all service users, in as much as, first, it facilitates and offers access to legal proceedings for citizenry. It makes services more easy to use and makes things user-friendly, promotes transparency, and especially in accountability and implementation of policies, it's very helpful. Now, as far as legal international cooperation, it is of utmost importance for Guatemala, and that is why we have subscribed to and ratified various treaties and bilateral agreements, as well as multilateral international agreements when it comes to criminal matters or legal matters. And this allows us to ask state parties to take up investigation in terms of common crimes and transnational organized crime as well. Of the legal cooperation in criminal matters, I would like to refer to the MLA, both active as well as passive, extradition and other provisional detention with a view to extradition, the rogatory letters, as well as cooperation and interinstitutional coordination of different entities or other agencies as to the requests for cooperation internationally. Inter-American law is very important in terms of cooperation, given that in Guatemala, this is an ally in this area, given the different treaties and different organizations that are ratified by Guatemala. This allows us to support member countries of the OAS through requests for mutual legal assistance in criminal matters. This is what we do. So the Attorney General's office, we have a specialized unit for international affairs. And since 2018, thus far, we have had 1,500 mutual legal assistance requests and 416 assistances. This is part of the development of the investigation against common crime and organized crime as well. Now, with regards to cyber crimes, this is still a strategic topic, and we have to accord a priority to this. And as much as this phenomena happens worldwide, in this case, specifically Guatemala has actively participated in ensuring protection of our society in the face of cybercrime. We've done this by adopting legislation which is adequate nationally and internationally, which allows for developing specialized investigations and have international cooperation. In an agreement on the Council of Europe, we're not a part of it yet, but nonetheless, since 2016, we asked to be part of that agreement, and this request was approved in 2019, and currently it's being technically analyzed. We are part of the 24 network for sharing technology, which is part of the Organization of American States, and as such, we're also party to the cyber network of the public attorneys general's offices. Our crime office for criminal analysis has been one of the successes of our country, and setting up in cyber crimes of the national or the civil authority and civil police is also part of our work. We have had initiatives for laws such as the law of prevention and protection against crime. We are well aware that we really have to step up our efforts in all of the issues that have been broached in this meeting and that are of interest to member countries of the Organization of American States. Notwithstanding that, we are part of the agreements of previous RUMJA meetings, and we will continue to spearhead all of the activities that move towards modernization and that strengthen the public administrative system when it comes to legal proceedings. And as far as concerns anything else, on behalf of Guatemala, we truly appreciate the invitation to participate in this very important activity, and we reiterate we are more than happy to offer our help to help out regionally and internationally. Thank you very much and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you very much, Guatemala. Now, let's move on to hear the head of delegation from Mexico. Mexico is recognized. We can hear you, Mexico, but we can't see you. Once we wait for the technical problems to be ironed out, we'll move on. Mexico has the floor. We'll go back to Mexico afterwards, and let's recognize the head of delegation from Panama. Good afternoon to everyone. Honorable Yana Salazar, Attorney General of the Republic of Ecuador, Jorge Gonzalez, Secretary of REMJA. The pandemic has given us an important emphasis on doubling up our efforts to digitally transform things. This is an emergency. It seems that it has boosted resistance that bogged down modernizing processes. The new judicial norm, as we have seen and as everyone understands, has called for digitizing things, and things will be stronger thereafter. In this case, the pandemic has been a positive catalyst, but this is good news in the midst of the crisis. Now, on behalf of the Attorney General of the nation and the Republic of Panama, Mr. Javier Salazar, we would like to greet international representatives who represent member states of the Organization of American States and who are with us at the 11th REMJA meeting, and we would like to express the interest of the Attorney General's office to wish you the best efforts to promote best practices, as well as reiterate our firm commitment of the country to offer the most far-reaching cooperation in all legal and criminal matters, anything that is necessary to prevent and quash crimes, including organized crime, particularly in the face of the challenges and difficulties caused by the pandemic, COVID-19. The evolution of crime, particularly transnational organized crime, in these times, in a very structured and sophisticated way when they commit crime in the midst of the health crisis, makes it necessary for competent authorities to get together, to broaden their capacity and wherewithal to receive and use, as well as facilitate greater international cooperation, as well as to close ranks, to minimize or eliminate the obstacles so as to offer legal assistance in criminal matters or successfully conclude a process of extradition. And this includes the use of information technologies and communication with a view to facilitating the different ways of international cooperation. The Attorney General of the Republic of Panama supports decidedly all of the actions with a view to improving efficiency of all procedures and attention for requests for legal cooperation and legal issues, as well as those that emerge from the electronic use of requests for cooperation among central authorities and the investigation teams. These are the new paradigms that we have to take on when it comes to international legal cooperation. The first of which is to modernize international cooperation, and the second is to work in a coordinated way, which is different from the traditional way, so that we can have a quicker and more useful cooperation. The Republic of Panama is a financial, commercial, and logistic hub, and this is necessary for dealing with organized crime. This circumstance has continued to be strengthened by certain events, and we now need to improve on an ongoing way all of the national policies in the fight against crime, and to deepen different mechanisms for international cooperation, as well as establish contacts with networks, with regional platforms and international cooperation when it comes to criminal matters, with a view to identify the competent authorities abroad and establish contacts with them. Now, with regards to international legal assistance, the Attorney General's Office is one of the 4 central authorities responsible for transmitting the regulatory proceedings of the country, and it's the only operative authority nationally that does so. Previously, it spearheaded a project to set up a technical interinstitutional committee. It's a forum for central authorities to coordinate all different activities that tend to promote guidelines or methodologies, good practices, and lessons learned, to promote better efficiency of all of the procedures when it comes to requests for MLA internationally. It doesn't help that COVID-19 pandemic, given all of the restrictions that we have in the entire world, has caused limitations for physical presence, and many of the financial resources in the public ministries or the have been used by the state to deal with other priority needs. And this, of course, caused significant changes in the traditional ways that we work. In other words, the physical management of documents, for example, and an evolution towards the digital culture, which has been applied across the board for all those involved in the system. So our internal legislation allows for us to receive digital legal assistance, granting an opportunity for receiving original documents, which in the face of the pandemic has meant a move of utmost importance so that international legal cooperation in criminal matters continues this course and is up and running. I should also like to underscore that from the Attorney General's office, we are fully willing to cooperate with all states so that international cooperation is fruitful, including reviewing the briefs and guiding everything formally so that petitions are in keeping with the requirements of our internal law and as such avoid any missteps. In practice, the pandemic called for strengthening coordination amongst competent authorities for international cooperation when it comes to legal matters, both the requesting state as well as the recipient state, and therefore information technologies have been strengthened to generate coordination through video conferencing and other forms of digital communication. Thus, we could have consultations and speed up consultations of the requiring state before the request for legal assistance. In this regard, then, the exchange of information informally amongst offices, amongst all of the possibilities within the law of each state, has been a very important mechanism to determine the guidelines for investigation to do and to recognize the possibilities of dealing with the international requirements with a view to becoming more wedded with all full respect to the requirements that the state needs for validity. Now, as far as concerns extradition, the principles and mediation which are applicable in the accusing state have been strengthened in other judicial controls, particularly by using video or hybrid conferences, and this with the participation of some of the parties, particularly the detained, when it comes to telephone hearings. And we also ensured that we had a digital copy of the extradition papers, or we could photograph or copy these briefs through technological tools. And thus, all of this has led to a guarantee of access to justice and has ensured the right to be heard by a competent court in reasonable time with the necessary guarantees. At the height of the pandemic, for the attention of the users, we used technology to the max by setting up a telephone digital directory so that attorneys could have consultations related to criminal proceedings. And we also had institutional emails so that lawyers could send off documents that didn't require any further formalities. And as such, the Supreme Court and the Attorney General's office kept their consultations updated with other rulings, and this ensured access of all the information by the users.
Proceso de extradición, especialmente
the use of ICTs in the extradition process, particularly when it comes to status hearings and other formal proceedings, including have been held before the Supreme Court of Justice, and this shows the state's commitment to provide continuous justice to its citizens. I'd also like to underscore that in the middle of the pandemic, our Supreme Court continued examining state cases involving those who had been arbitrarily detained or incarcerated, and the Panamanian Constitution. The transformation that this has meant for the Panamanian justice system has led to significant progress in providing justice and strengthening our institutions. And this has even allowed us to overcome the challenges related to the pandemic. the pandemic. Finally, fighting the various types of crime, particularly transnational organized crime, and the will to provide the broadest international cooperation possible means that our justice administration system has adapted to the reality of the pandemic and used and employed new technologies in order to ensure respect for human rights as well as a foundation for the rule of law. Finally, we would like to thank Ecuador and the organizers of this event for their very hard work. And we would also like to thank all of the delegates representing various member states of the OAS for their very fruitful and valuable contribution and participation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Panama. Now I would like to recognize the head of delegation of Mexico. Mexico, can you please request the floor? Please request the button once to request the floor, then turn on your microphone and your camera. we see the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime, as well as the role of the public ministry in ensuring international justice. And this is part of a 24/7 network that has allowed us to provide immediate assistance for specific investigations and cases. We have also established a specialized prosecution unit that focuses on cybercrime, and this is nationally competent. It has 68 prosecutors specialized in cybercrimes, as well as a guide for investigating these types of crimes. Additionally, we see various other attempts at improvement. Just 2 years ago, our Congress passed Law 3952 that created the Council for the Reform of the Justice System. This is a space in which spaces within our system are able to coordinate on an ongoing basis. One of the main results of this has been the comprehensive approval of a public policy aimed at reforming the justice system in the coming years. It will be built by consensus, and this has been possible by, despite the turbulent political context and the COVID-19 pandemic. This reform was recently adopted, and it proposes 9 priority objectives. That is to drive good governance and the interoperability within our justice system. For that, we have presented a draft law agreed upon with all of the authorities from the justice system. Secondly, to promote access to justice for all individuals. 3, modernize judicial processes in non-criminal courts, as well as criminal procedures in and our penitentiary system. 5, strengthen our human resources in our justice system. 6, improve the exercise of information. 7, adopt anti-corruption policies. 8, to fight violence against women and family violence. And 9, promote the predictability of legal decisions and regulatory adaptation. The use of ICTs in order to make our justice system more efficient is quite clear and cross-cutting in nature, and this affects 3 main areas. First of all, the interoperability within our system and protection. Second, submitting electronic files in both criminal and non-criminal cases. And third, transparency, predictability of legal decisions, and regulatory adaptation. This last point requires greater training that goes beyond technology and has an impact on our legal culture, which requires individual coherence by each judge. This will allow us to deepen the application of legal precedents in various areas, and this involves the use of AI technology in building and evaluating legal decisions. In all of these areas, the human rights and justice system understands that building a new technological culture is a reality that needs to be adapted to the local realities and promote access to justice, particularly for vulnerable populations. We have a special concern for 3 areas related to the protection of fundamental rights. First of all, that is compliance with guarantees for due process in public defense services. Secondly, the need to develop intercultural communication to provide access to justice for indigenous communications. And third, to provide access to justice for people in the penitentiary system. When it comes to the use of technology, in order to make ourselves more efficient and effective, we need international legal cooperation that is in line with the recommendations and conclusions of RUMJA 11, and we are interested in promoting the institutionalization of working groups in areas focused on penitentiary populations, as well as the transfer of people who have been convicted, as well as ensuring timely information for better decision making in all of these areas. When it comes to international legal cooperation in criminal matters, it is very interesting to look at the exchange of best practices, which is lessons learned and experiences in the use of ICTs in international legal cooperation during the COVID-19 pandemic. From there, from the Public Ministry in Peru as and the International Observatory on Criminal Law, Justice System, and Human Rights, we are able to share our experience during the pandemic, and we think that it is necessary that we have spaces for cooperation and exchange of information that go beyond these state entities and include universities and research centers that promote ICTs, as well as other projects that are pertinent for our legal systems. Finally, I would like to note along these lines that Peru has its 24/7 network that I already mentioned, and the Public Ministry is part of the cyber network for the Ibero-American Association of Public Ministries and the contact network on high-tech crimes, which is also available 24/7. Under that framework, we are very interested in strengthening, through the REMJA working group, cooperation in 4 areas. That is strengthening capacities, building evidence on cybercrime, legal cooperation against cybercrime, and 4th, legislative developments. When it comes to synergy between REMJA, MISPA, and MESISIC, Peru expresses its most open disposition to cooperate with various regional and national organizations focused in public security and the fight against corruption, as these are ongoing priority areas for Peru. To conclude, I would like to express our desire to continue strengthening REMJA, even in difficult times such as the pandemic, and I would like to salute the Secretary General of the OAS, our colleagues from various countries, and express our gratitude and appreciation for the technical team behind REMJA and Ecuador, which prepared this process that we are seeing today at this very important meeting. And finally, I would like to thank my colleagues from the Peruvian Foreign Ministry and our permanent representative and his team that have made our presence here today possible. I would also like to apologize that tomorrow I will not be able to join all of you due to a Council of Ministers event, but our Minister of Justice will be here. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much to Peru, and now we will go back to Mexico. Can you hear me? At the outset, I would like to apologize to all of you for our connection issues. Once again, we apologize. We are ashamed of this lack of connectivity we just experienced, but this is one example of just how we have had to adapt and be flexible in the face of the pandemic. And so, if you will, I will get right to my presentation. Dear Ministers of Justice, prosecutors, Attorneys General of the Americas with us today. At the outset, I would like to express to all of you my very respectful greetings to on behalf of the Attorney General of Mexico. And I would also like to recognize the outstanding work by Ecuador, which is hosting the meeting, as well as the technical secretariat, which made it possible for us to hold this very important meeting despite the complex time in which we find ourselves living due to the pandemic. Today, more than ever, strengthening our cooperation among REMJA members is more important than ever. But we need to share our experiences and best practices, as well as new tools available, in order to strengthen our institutions and allow them to continue carrying out their work, including in the face of adverse situations and new challenges, which put to the test our ability and skills in responding effectively on behalf of our societies. And the health measures in the face of the pandemic has made us look at our national, regional, and international justice systems in new light. Mexico, which I represent and have the honor of doing so for 32 years, has made adjustments in our justice system. This includes the use of new ICTs, which have played a fundamental role in this. First of all, we see how the interruption of staff in the prosecutor's office has affected our justice system and led to delays, and yet we were able to use alternatives with various different legal measures, as well as the video conferencing systems, in order to continue providing responses to international legal requests and other legal proceedings. We have been able to also have e-filing available. These have been important tools that are not new, but have shown how essential they are when it comes to responding to requests for international cooperation as well as legal assistance. The Attorney General's office has used many different measures in order to respond to requests during the pandemic. This includes new ICTs, which were very important in achieving our goal, as we adopted video conferences in order to react in a timely fashion and hold hearings, though in some cases we did have to hold in-person hearings due to various protocols in order to comply with regulations and laws. And on the other hand, we made the decision to work with justice centers in responding to requests only in cases that had been cataloged previously and were still in force. Once we lifted the health measures for the pandemic, we were able to redouble our efforts in order to process these requests that had been pending during the pandemic. And I would also like to underscore that during this period of healthcare measures, we saw detentions that continued to happen. The federal police were still detaining people, and we were able to process these cases. In Mexico, we had the opportunity during the pandemic to turn over 34 people that were requested by other countries around Latin America, and we also received from our colleagues around Latin America 13 individuals that had been in other countries. We have also seen respective medical examinations taking out on detainees in the face of the COVID-19 crisis. I would also like to underscore that in Mexico, as is the case with our counterparts, we have carried out laudable efforts in order to respond to extradition requests. For example, we relied on our experience and international extradition processes. And in addition to requests by the authorities that we send individuals requested by other countries, we also had support from our counterparts making those requests in using their own airplanes in order to carry out the extradition in some cases. We also had a lot of progress that would not have been possible due to the suspension of flights, and yet Mexico had to delay some extraditions by 60 days, and this was again due to the COVID-19 restrictions. This pandemic has forced us to confront new challenges as well as a lot of opportunities. And this confirms more than ever how necessary it is to continue broadening our international ties. Finally, I'd like to conclude my presentation by inviting the delegations present to continue sharing here at this forum the best practices and successful experiences they have had in order to allow us to make our processes in the administration of justice increasingly agile and streamlined, as well as to improve the efficacy of international legal cooperation. I'd like to take this opportunity once again to thank the prosecutors from Argentina, Judge, Brazil. Thank you very much for receiving our requests in a timely fashion, and you have been very efficient in your response. And we had a lot of very important sensitive cases, and we always saw a lot of will on your part to cooperate and work with us. And once again, to all of my colleagues, brothers and sisters, the doors of this office are always open to international cooperation, and we are at your orders. The stronger we are, the more united we are, the better we will be able to end and eradicate crime. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Mexican delegation. And now we will give the floor to the delegation of the Dominican Republic. Good afternoon on behalf of the Public Ministry and the Public Prosecutor's Office and our Attorney General, who was unable to attend due to a scheduling conflict. I would like to congratulate the chair of this meeting for the incredible effort that she has put forth, as well as thank you to the Technical Secretariat of the OAS. Paradoxically, we are talking about new ICTs in the administration of justice, and it's quite clear that the use of technology allows us to connect more effectively and efficiently and to continue working toward our shared goal of the administration of justice. And we should remind everyone that this pandemic has highlighted the fact that many of the things that a lot of our prosecutors' offices and countries had been doing years ago, in fact, a lot of these instruments were not functional. We see that in the OAS, for example, several years ago, there was the implementation of a platform to ensure that emails between delegations and the prosecutor's office were managed safely and securely. And now we see how we have a lot of ICTs and private use platforms that are ensuring that security today. I'd also like to note that international legal cooperation, both in civil and particularly in criminal cases, focused on the main areas of organized crime, such as trafficking in persons, trafficking in arms, money laundering, all of these platforms have been vitally important for those of us who have been using them and integrating them in our own technology platforms as very useful tools for work.
En el ámbito de la Conferencia de Ministros de Justicia Iberoamericana, en el año 2019 firmamos el Tratado de Medellín, que es un tratado que ya ha sido aprobado por varios de los países iberoamericanos, que va a permitir.
This is going to allow us to have legal validity in terms of the requests made as we move ahead with all of these tools. Almost the entire population uses these tools in a very natural way. So it's already enforced, and there are many states that are going to be able to validate these kinds of communications in record time. Looking at the synergy in REMDA and the different activities with international protocols in the fight against corruption and organized crime, I think that this is a great opportunity in terms of access to justice from the Dominican Republic standpoint. We have participated virtually in many different fora, notification, and this was proof maybe 2 years ago that has now become a reality of the kind of work that we're doing with the support of the prosecutors' offices and legal services that have used their legal services on a platform that has allowed us to practically have all activities virtually, 100%. We wouldn't want to overlook this opportunity to commend all of the presentations made this morning and congratulate you for them. It was done in a very swimmingly way with great efforts made by all and by all of our countries, and it underscores the importance of using the new technologies to facilitate access to justice and the efficacy in the process of international legal assistance. The chair's presentation, Madam Salazar's, and the legal secretary of the OAS, and all of the presentations done by the JSCA, and particularly all of the presentations made by the working group in cooperation with international players, and the presentation of cybercrimes group by the United States. Once again, we reiterate the commitment of the Dominican Republic and its offices to continue to strengthen this very important network of ministers, attorney generals, and ministers of justice throughout the Americas. The topic of national sovereignty has to be flexible when we're talking about the fight against international or transnational organized crime or any other manifestation that flies in the face of our citizens' rights and that has to resort to justice and the use thereof. Finally, let me underscore and highlight some of the comments that were made this morning. Let me pick up and say that it's clear that the use of this technology is crucial, be it with victims or users, and even those who are indicted. Our attention has to be on people so that we can provide justice services. I wouldn't want to overlook thanking the chair for this, or at this assembly, for all of the efforts made to have this meeting, and also thank our ambassador to the Organization of American States, Mr. Fiallo, and the minister for all of the praiseworthy efforts that they have made in sending us the information and sending all of the parts that have made this event possible. We'd like to wish them the best of success for this meeting, and you can count on the Dominican Republic for all support. Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you to the head of the delegation of the Dominican Republic. Uruguay now has the floor. Very well. Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, ministers, attorneys general, representative authorities who are present at this meeting. First, I would like to thank all of those who have worked for today to be possible, and also those who have particularly worked, the chair, Ecuador, for all of the preparatory meetings that took place before this meeting. I truly appreciate the devotion and all of the work that has been done, which is crystallized in this meeting, which has been and will continue to be very important. I should also like to point out that I have warm greetings to the Ministry of Culture, and given other pressing issues on his agenda, couldn't be with us this afternoon. But there are comments from the ministry as well as others from the Ministries of Justice, but it's now my remit. So I couldn't, or I would be remiss if I didn't speak about this public health emergency. It's punished all of mankind, particularly our people. But it's true that this has underscored that we can find the necessary mechanisms in technology to protect the right to life threatened by the pandemic, in this case, or in the future, but other unforeseen phenomena. We cannot put off the use of rights. The world of work, the alternative to work, will continue to be looked at, including we can use ways and means that are going to be around. The world of medicine and preventative medicine has been seen as an alternative for difficulties and for in-person medical health. Long-distance education, remote education, hybrid systems for education in the future is a show that educational authorities in our country have pivoted with learning and will do so in the next few years. Trade relations, perhaps, have been one of the main spearheaders when it comes to looking at the pandemic, and has worked across borders and remotely to successfully overcome these problems. And I could quote and cite many other examples. In the case of international cooperation, we've had results. Now individual rights, the efficacy of which is tested over time, is committed. When we had to deal with witnesses and their statements, the central authorities had made very important efforts to comply with the requests for cooperation by other states, but nothing comparable to the ease with which we did our work with or through electronic means for conferences. The incidents and the use of technology, not just for the central authorities' work or for anything that was required by justice in other countries, but basically to provide better protection of individual rights. And this is the proof itself that new technologies have to be part of the justice system henceforth. Now, with regards to access to justice as a service in our country, it has to use all of the necessary opportunities and spaces to transform these technologies as a main ally. Particularly in the next few years, we have to incorporate technology as an internal management tool, using it and adapting it, streamlining it to the internal processes and formal solutions. Secondly, we can use the new technologies as an instrument for information, both for the different stages of the process and what is judicial decisions that are adopted. Now, in this world, we had a successful program for raising awareness of the public with databases of the legal standards. But whilst on the level of public administration, we made strides in the implementation and use of digital identity documents for users. The justice system continues to have to deal with presentation and the different roles of all of the documents that require legal validity. Now, we had to review these issues and look at the justice and in-person ways and means, but the basis of this union are not far afield, not far-fetched. We're talking about the guarantees and the protection of individual rights. Now, clearly, it's very important. This is crucial. Maybe it's not going to be a major mover, but it's going to require some legal tweaking. But undoubtedly, it will require building trust of the new models of justice that we will have to implement. Trust in that technological strides and the benefits are not geared only to technical ease in use, but it will have to provide absolute certainty that the defense of rights cannot be breached nor bogged down in time, nor even in international emergency situations, because individual rights also can have negative outcomes if it's not respected. The use of technologies for the service of justice is declared, and use thereof has been taken on. Technology is used and it's present. So we have solid standards to build trust. This shows that the only purpose is to value and provide implementation of rights, and as we have seen in international legal cooperation. So along those lines, then, we can ensure that technology has a privileged place in justice and its efficacy will go beyond the problems that will crop up. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the delegation of Uruguay. Let us move on now with a presentation from delegations and give the floor to the head of the delegation of Trinidad and Tobago.
Trinidad and Tobago, could you please turn off your mic and your camera?
Hi, good afternoon. Farzana Mohammed from Trinidad and Tobago. I'd like to present compliments on behalf of the Honorable Attorney General, Mr. Faris Al-Rawi. Mr. Al-Rawi extends his apologies. He was delayed at a parliamentary sitting today and is also dealing with the emergency regulations under our state of emergency. I'd like to ask for permission for Mr. Al-Rawi to join the conversation tomorrow if possible, please.
No tenemos problema y esperamos.
We don't have any problem with that. We'll await the presentation of the head of the delegation of Trinidad and Tobago tomorrow.
Chair, Your Excellency, on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago.
Gracias. Y con esto, como
Thank you very much. And as much as we have fulfilled the time frame that we have, I'd like to thank the delegations for the very valuable contributions made this afternoon. Before concluding this particular session, the chair would like to say that we will meet tomorrow, Wednesday, the 19th of May, at 9:30 Washington time to continue with this dialogue of the heads of delegation. For all of you, thank you very much for your participation. Have a wonderful afternoon.